Can you save $2,000 and a penny while getting the same video quality? The Sony a7S III was my main camera for the past years, but this year I tried the Lumix S5 IIX. I took it to Peru, Bolivia and Colombia for 4 weeks and put it to its limits. Today I talk in depth about the differences between both cameras and which you should choose, and the result might surprise you. I always take 3 lenses with me. First, a wide-angle zoom lens 16-35. Second lens is an all-rounder lens 24-70 mm f2.8, and I also have a 50 mm 1.4 portrait lens with me for some close-up shots and for filming people. For the period of filming, Panasonic sent me the setup so I can test it, but if I would buy it by myself, I wouldn't buy Panasonic lenses but save some money and get Sigma lenses, so it would only cost this. On the other side, my Sony setup, which would be more expensive. This is the pricing. The only difference between those two setups is that the Panasonic 16-35 has an aperture of f4 and not f2.8. It's not available. Is that a problem? Actually no, because I don't need a blurry background when vlogging. The only advantage would be that f2.8 would result in better exposure when shooting in low light conditions. But wait until we talk about low light later on. So if we look at the prices, this point definitely goes to the Lumix. Panasonic is known for its great stabilization, but is it better than Sony's? Here you can see some handheld clips from South America, shot on the Lumix S5 IIX with electronic image stabilization on. For me, it felt like it was better than Sony, but to be sure, I made a side-by-side comparison, and here are the results. I was actually shocked how much better the Lumix is. And then I tried to walk backwards, where the camera shakes even more. The Sony stabilization was so bad that I could delete all the clips, but the Lumix, damn, way better. On the Lumix you can even turn on Boost IS, that's especially for doing tripod movements, and your videos will look like shot on a tripod. And after my South America trip, Panasonic also released a new firmware update, which improved the stabilization even more. We'll talk about that later, but the cheaper camera definitely has the better stabilization. And keep in mind, if you travel a lot, stabilization is probably one of the most important features for you. If you don't use a gimbal, you'll be way more flexible with your shots and you'll be able to capture moments that are spontaneous. This isn't possible on a gimbal. Both cameras can shoot H.265 with 4:2 10-bit, which is a great solution. It saves file size while maintaining great video quality. And that's perfect for your client projects and social media projects. But if you do need higher quality, you can also shoot in a ProRes codec by attaching an SSD to your Lumix camera. That's not possible with the Sony a7S III. However, for the best quality but also largest file size, you can use an external recorder to shoot 12-bit RAW videos. Having this option on a $2,000 camera is crazy. So the Lumix has better codec options. But what about slow motion? That's the point where the Sony scores. The a7S III can shoot up to 4K 60 and 4K 120 FPS without any cropping. The Lumix on the other side can only shoot 4K 60 with cropping. I often shoot in slow motion, and the crop on the Lumix is a disadvantage sometimes. But since I knew that from the beginning, I bought the right lenses to make sure I always get the framing that I need, even after cropping. But still, this point goes to the Sony. If we don't look at the frame rates, but at the resolution, the Lumix has a feature that I love. So both cameras can shoot in 4K, but the Lumix can also capture the whole sensor area, which is a 3:2 frame ratio in 6K. That's called open gate. So if you need a single clip, both horizontal and vertical, for YouTube and Instagram, this is a perfect format. It makes it easier to crop it for both scenarios. If you want to use clips for YouTube and Instagram at the same time, this feature is perfectly made for you. Skin tones on a Sony often tend to look unnatural, and that's what I was so excited about to test on a Lumix. And I can clearly say that the skin tones and other colors of Lumix look more natural. That makes color correction and grading so much easier for me. If you've ever used the Lumix, you'll probably know what I'm talking about. And that's the fun thing. The color look of a camera doesn't just depend on the technical specifications. No, it depends on the brand and its software. So even if I would decide to buy the best Sony camera out there, it would never compensate for the beautiful colors of a Lumix. This point goes to the Lumix, but keep in mind that colors always are a matter of taste. If you like this comparison so far, leave a like and make sure to subscribe for more videos. I feel like both cameras have a similar battery runtime, but here are the exact minutes. The important thing for travelers is one battery is always enough for me when shooting a whole day on my travels, but I still always keep a backup battery in my backpack. If you look at the changelog of Lumix firmware, you can see that there are many new updates with improvements quarterly. For my Sony, I got updates only once a year. So with Lumix's latest firmware update, which I was able to beta test, there came many improvements. First, the autofocus subject detection now uses the power of AI. It can now also detect motorcycles and cars. Even the human and animal detection have been improved. And that's crazy because it worked really well before and now it's even better with the power of AI. When it comes to stabilization, Lumix also has added a new high setting, which allows for insane stabilization. But just keep in mind that it will also crop a bit more. My Sony a7S III is able to record the original video and a proxy file at the same time. That wasn't possible with the Lumix until this past firmware update. That's perfect if you're editing on lower spec PCs or on Windows. I'm just playing. It's pretty insane that Panasonic was able to allow this feature just by a software update. So the hardware must be really powerful inside because it actually needs lots of performance to record proxies and also save them on the SD card simultaneously to the original file. So for updates and even now the better stabilization and autofocus, big point for the Lumix. For low-light videos, a feature called Dual ISO is important. It allows for a second native ISO. Briefly explained, this means that there are two different ISO values on which you will experience less grain. And guess what? Both the Lumix and the Sony have the Dual ISO feature. Lumix in Vlog at 4000 and Sony in S-Log at 12,800. So first, let's have a look at the shadows on the native ISO. You can see that the noise is really low on both cameras. Now let's compare the second native ISO. You can see that there's just a bit more grain on the Lumix, but both cameras do a great job. And the important thing is, all clips are usable, even in low light conditions. The big question, what is the better camera for you? To answer that, I can give you two tips. First, make a list of the features that you need the most. Is it low light, stabilization, cheaper pricing, slow motion, a 6K feature to shoot for YouTube and Instagram at the same time, whatever. And then on this list, see what camera fulfills more of your needs. And secondly, I could tell you what I would choose in my case. I'm a one-person filmmaker who travels a lot, but always needs the best camera for social media and for bigger client projects. So what would I buy if I had no camera today? I would go for a Lumix setup, which saves me $2,300 and invest those $2,300 in accessories, lighting and education. Because the only downside is that there's no 4K 100 and there's cropping in slow motion on the Lumix. But for me, the stabilization, colors and open gate feature are even more important and it's still cheaper. So I'm curious. What will you buy or what did you buy? Let me know in the comments. Leave us up and a like if you enjoyed this video and then I'll see you soon.